He was having a nice time talking to reporters about what his district would be and how tough it was. I asked him about Kamala Harris, and he literally bolted away from me and ran onto the house.
Hey everyone, so I want to take some time today to talk to you about a little-known political figure, and that is Kamala Harris. Now, she ran for president in 2024, and she was Joe Biden's vice president. But since losing the election, she's basically become a political recluse. I mean, we really don't see much of her in public life anymore. Now, there are rumors that Kamala could be running for governor in California, but Democrats are not thrilled about the idea, as this CNN panel is going to perfectly illustrate for us. So let's get into it.
What I did is I talked to a lot of people on the ground in California, in the House, who are looking at what it would mean for them, how it would affect their races, including a lot of these marginal House Democrats. Among them, George Min, Dave Min, who won a seat in Orange County last year, flipped a seat, or held that seat on, and he said he was having a nice time talking to reporters about what his district would be and how tough it was. I asked him about Kamala Harris, and he literally bolted away from me and ran onto the house. I asked George.
I know how that feels.
Yeah, you do. More than most. George Whiteside's another congressman who did flip a seat in the out.
Typically, you only hear that someone is running away from Kamala as governor as a metaphor, but it appears that the idea was so appalling to this Democrat that he had to physically remove himself from the situation, which is quite telling about her reputation in the state. What's fascinating about this, at least to me, is that Kamala Harris was the undisputed face of the Democratic Party not so long ago. But maybe that explains her troubles today. I mean, we all saw how Democrats fared with Kamala at the helm, at least in appearance, if not in reality, actually making the big decisions within the party. And so I think they are desperately trying to promote a new, fresh vision of the party. The only problem is they don't really have the right candidates to do that. I mean, you have Mamdani in New York, and to his credit, he is much less senile than Joe Biden. But he makes a pretty unappealing candidate on a national scale, or frankly, anywhere outside of New York City, for a whole host of reasons, many of which I'm sure you're familiar with. I mean, socialism or democratic socialism might be trendy among a certain segment of young college-educated Brooklynites, but I don't think it's going to have much appeal for middle-aged people, people in the Midwest, critical voters in swing states. But let's get back to the assessment of Kamala Harris as a gubernatorial candidate.
Outskirts of LA last year, and I asked him about it, and he paused for a very long time thinking about what to say, and finally ended on, well, if she decides to run, that's her prerogative. That said, a lot of California Democrats are looking at the current field of gubernatorial candidates and saying they don't see someone in there who has the stature and the experience to stand up to Trump, and they know, based on what this 6 months have been so far for Gavin Newsom, what he's been dealing with, that that's going to be a big part of whatever California's future holds.
And you talked to Nancy Pelosi, who obviously you know very well, in that book about Nancy Pelosi. Her quote is very telling. She said, Isaac asked her, what should she do here, Harris? She said, I want her to do whatever she wants to do about running for governor.
And that's the kind of quote that just screams, please do it.
I mean,
Yes, clearly Nancy Pelosi has placed her unfettered confidence in Kamala Harris as a candidate for governor of California. But Democrats are facing much larger issues than just the state of California. They say they want someone who can stand up to Trump, but we've yet to see that sort of Democrat really emerge even on the national stage. I mean, Democrats have been trying pretty much in vain to get one over on Trump for the entirety of his second administration. So far, the most success that they've had has been with Jeffrey Epstein. We've seen people like Jasmine Crockett of Texas come out as a full-blown Epstein truther out of the blue, when previously she seemed pretty indifferent or at least quiet on the matter. But Nancy Pelosi still has a lot of power in the Democratic Party, so if she is issuing statements like this in public, it certainly speaks to Kamala Harris's fall from the top of the hierarchy.
You have a long history, those two.
They do
Long
have
story.
a long and tortured history,
Tumultuous.
but it really is remarkable for someone who was just the standard bearer for the party in a massive national election that you really can't find people who are saying, yes, we love her, she's our heroine, and we can't wait for her to get in this. I found the same thing when I was reporting in California a couple of months ago, that you don't find a huge amount of people saying that they can't wait for her to run. And you don't find a huge amount of people saying that they think she would be great at the job either. It's not necessarily a position that her background and experience they feel make her uniquely suited for, despite all of her qualifications. And I think there's also a sense of where has she been since the election, right?
Yes, well, anybody can become president of the United States, but not just anybody deserves to be governor of California, as we're all well aware. But it's not just the Democrats who are perhaps washing their hands of Kamala. I doubt that CNN would air a panel about Kamala Harris with this sort of valence in the middle of the election or even during Joe Biden's presidency. I mean, I can't say that I've totally scrutinized the outlet's coverage of Kamala Harris, but at the very least, the public perception about channels like CNN or MSNBC is that they were very reluctant to criticize Joe Biden's administration. So even airing something of this sort is an indication that Kamala Harris has indeed fallen from the good graces of the party and the various institutions which revolve around it.
Walz has been out there on the trail, pounding the pavement on a sort of apology tour, trying to figure out what went wrong. She's really been in hiding. She's made a few public appearances, but she has not been out there really. And you know, you have a Democratic base that is angry and terrified and really wants to see their leaders fighting, and she hasn't been out there fighting.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Yes, well, speaking of the Democratic base, there was a recent poll from the Wall Street Journal. Now, this poll was conducted by a Democratic and a Republican pollster, and they polled 1,500 voters for their sentiments on the Democratic Party, on the Republican Party, what the parties are doing well, what they could be doing better, etc. And the Democratic Party received its lowest rating in 3 decades of Wall Street Journal polls. So I think that the general perception of the party is certainly a negative one, and I also wonder if diehard Democrat voters have totally lost faith in their leaders and in the direction that the party is going. The infighting between members is pretty catty in public, and you're definitely seeing a rift between this sort of geriatric Nancy Pelosi establishment sect and people like Mamdani who are younger and want to push the party in a more radical direction. Now, previously I would have lumped AOC in there, but I think that she's taking steps to secure some establishment credit, so we'll see about her. But the panelist here also mentions Tim Walz, who indeed is on this strange podcast apology tour circuit. We saw him with the Democrats, Joe Rogan, Jamie Harrison, and unfortunately I did sit through that podcast, and I have to say that he doesn't really offer much substance in his autopsy of the 2024 election. I mean, they seem to be towing the current party line, which is, we know we have problems, we know that our messaging is off, but we're kind of going to keep doing it anyway. So it remains to be seen what the path forward will look like for the Democratic Party. I imagine they are probably praying for a Bill Clinton-like figure to lead them out of the wilderness. But at present, it seems like Democrats are pretty hostile to charismatic young men of the Bill Clinton mold, so they may have to work on diversifying their ranks if they want to pursue that future. But what do you think of Kamala Harris for governor of California? Let me know in the comment section below. Give this video a like, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.